Hey everybody, this is Daniel here with Propelio, and I've got Grant Kemp from CreativeCashFlow.com. We're starting this Grant Teach Me Something series back up again. I'm excited to have Grant here in the studios. For everybody that's out there, if you can hear us, if you can see everything that's going on, please drop some comments. Let us know that you can hear Grant coming in, man. How you doing over there, Grant?
What's up? I'm doing great, man. I'm so pumped to be getting Grant Teach Me Something back together. And this is such a crazy situation to be doing it quarantined and virtual, but thank God for technology. And thanks so much for, starting this back up, getting your studio built out on your side and get these streams. I know I've had a lot of people looking to get this education in front of them again. So,
Right.
man, I'm just happy to be here. We've got a lot to go over, don't we, Daniel?
It's a crazy market right now, man. Like I don't know what to say, but I know that I've heard some of the conversations you've been having, and I've seen some of the things that you've been doing over there at CreativeCashFlow.com. And man, I'm going to get some of your insight. I want to see what your thoughts are on everything that's going on in the world right now.
Yeah, most definitely. And just like always, we're going to be monitoring for questions both here, on the YouTube stream, on the Facebook stream. Like, if you've got questions, hit us with them because we're going to be looking for them. This is a wild ride that we're on right now, is it not? I mean, I've got so many people asking so many questions, and you should be. There's a lot of questions to be asked right now. There's a lot going on, and so what we want to do is we want to kind of hit a little bit of a mini series starting up right now to where we are addressing what's current. As we've always done, we're going to be getting you real, current, actual information that's actionable. That's a big part of Grant Teach Me Something. We've been off for. I mean, Daniel, when did we stop this? What, 6 months ago, something like that?
Was it, man? I know that we took the end of the year off last year because we had a lot of stuff going on in our personal businesses, and then on the Propelio side, man, we had just a really rough first beginning of the year. So yeah, it's probably been at least 4 or 5 months. I don't know if it's been quite 6 months,
Yeah.
but it's been a while, man.
It has
So
been a while, but this has been something I've heard a lot of people asking to get back going, and so I'm just thrilled. I'm thrilled to be here, and especially when people need us the most. It's like the bat signal has gone out with quarantine and all that. It's kind of changed a lot of people's model entirely. I mean, it's ruined people's models and it's helped people's models. And so what we need to do is we need to start addressing how should you be looking at this situation, right? Is this something that you should be shaking in your boots about? Is this something you should be excited about? I mean, where are we? So this is a very non-rhetorical question. I would really like for you guys to interact with us. If you remember, and we're going to have a lot of people joining Grant Teach Me Something for the first time. And so as a recap, like, we want interaction. I want to know what you guys are thinking because it's all about making sure that we're getting you the information that you need to be successful. So drop in questions. This is not a rhetorical question. I want to know, coming into this stream, what is your attitude towards the market? Are you fearful? Are you kind of shaky on what's going on and scared of where we're going? Are you excited? And whichever answer you give, please expand on that. Let me know what you're fearful about, why you're excited, because that will help us to shift kind of some of the things that we're talking about into something that's going to be the most helpful for you. So Daniel, let me start with you. How do you interpret what's going on right now? Like, what's your just overall, let's go give a quick overall just viewpoint of, hey man, coronavirus hit, we've gone quarantined, we've got a freaking $2.2 trillion bailout package, which is, by the way, the United States' entire budget is $4 trillion. What's your view of what's happening here and where we should be looking at, or what we should be behaving like?
from a real estate standpoint, I mean, I think you and I discussed that pretty heavily. I think that's one of the key things that I think the reason why so many people reached out was because you and I had both went live probably about 4 or 5 months ago. I guess probably closer to 6 or 7 months ago now, and we discussed exactly what we should be doing in a downturning market, which is what we had both said was likely going to happen here in 2020. But I wasn't expecting it to happen quite like this. So there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of things that have occurred that it's really hard to predict. But my overall thought process is pre-foreclosures are about to go on the uphill rise for the next probably 12 to 18 months, really heavy. I don't think that's going to happen in the next 6 months, but in the next 12 to 18 months, I really think that we're going for a really large expansion of foreclosures coming through. On your side,
Yeah.
Grant, like, I know that we had discussed, in that downturning market, subject to being a really big moving piece in that playbook of, you know, the equity starting to disappear, properties are starting to go to foreclosure, let's go subject to, and then continue rolling forward with shorts and burr, and then as we continue through cycles, moving through different strategies to keep them viable. But with the current environment, my personal opinion is we've got a long period of about 5 years of hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about you?
Well, and you know, and what is hurt, right?
Well,
Like what does hurt mean to you?
for me, like, I'm looking at it as a world. I'm not just talking about it from a real estate investor standpoint. I mean, there's already small businesses that are just going to get decimated, like, and that's just going to keep going across the board. There's going to be a lot of businesses, especially small businesses, in my opinion. Small businesses are the backbone to our economy. They're probably the you know, the essential piece of every small town, of every small community, of every part of American life. Well, most of those businesses are about to get wiped, in my opinion. And then moving forward from there, the lack of, how do I say that, adequate resources available right now means that
Okay, and what's a resource that you're thinking of when you say adequate resources?
as of right now, things such as, like, let's say, the ability to pay your bills, the income, the ability to get out there and substantiate and create that income. Like, they've got the PPP loans coming out of SBA, they've got the EIDL loans coming out of that side. But even with those types of things, there's going to be a lot of people that aren't going to be able to survive that. So there's going to be a lot of people in hurt, which is exactly what we talked about last time in regards to, you know, a changing economy. But I didn't expect it to happen this quick or this hard. Like,
Right.
I expected it to happen in 2020, but not in this fashion. By no means in this fashion. So resources being ultimately the money and time. You know, people are about to get wiped, and that's, in my opinion, never a good thing.
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting thing. So again, you know, drop your comments into these lives. I've got my assistant Ika, who is awesome. If any of you are members of creativecashflow.com, you know that on our Monday night Q&As, on our streams that we do exclusive for members, Ika comes in and she helps us out. It's very difficult for us to keep going with the education and staying on track with that and trying to keep up with all of the conversations, as we do want to do. We are reading your comments live, but if you have a question or something to go into it, she's going to pull that and put that into a Google Doc for me so I can read it. So no matter where you're watching it, make sure to put that in. But Daniel, I'm really glad that you pointed out those things that you did, because I think it's all very applicable. Today, what I'd like to do is we're going to try and hammer into three kind of segments specifically about where we're at and where we're going. And the segments that I really wanted to go over with you guys is to discuss, like, you know, what does this mean, right? What does this mean for the market, and what does this mean for us as real estate investors? And as Daniel pointed out, we need to be thinking about, what does this mean for the world, right? What is that happening? That is a very first and very logical preceding thought process to the next question that I really want you guys to be thinking about. And I've been preaching this for the last few weeks in our executives group and in the CCF members group. You're an entrepreneur. If you're watching this video, you are an entrepreneur. You are a small business owner. So what are the questions that you need to be asking yourself? That's what we're going to flow into, you know, after kind of addressing where the market is and what this does for the market, both ours, you know, micro and macro. What questions do you need to be asking? Because one of the things that we have found through experience and through time is that questions are probably the most important. I was going to say, I'm going to give my like quasi-intellectualism and say questions are the most important answer, right? Like, it's very cheesy, but it's true. Like, if you're a business owner, the most important thing you can do is ask questions, not the least of which being, what questions am I not asking? That's one of the most important questions you can ask. And then we'll kind of turn this around into spending this last segment a little bit of like, where should you be spending your time? Because right now, for a lot of folks, time is all they've got. You know, we're stuck at home, and we've got to figure out what we're going to do with this. And so the idea of where do I need to be spending my time is going to be extremely important for this, right? So what we'll do is, in the comments eventually, we will try to link to the mini series that Daniel and I did last year. A lot of people have been commenting on that because, you know, we called out a lot of the things that are happening here. Now, nobody saw a global pandemic being the thing that kicked off this financial crisis. However, so what that's called, it's called a black swan event. Black swan events are things that it just comes in and it's like nobody saw it coming. Boom, there goes the economy. Everything's crazy now. So that's what we've hit. What I'd like to know, and I haven't seen anybody chiming in yet. So I want you guys to tell me, are you fearful? Are you excited? Why on both sides do you feel that way? I think that this is an opportunity time that we need to be, excited about, with all proper respect to the just absolutely, terrible implications of the pandemic itself. It's very important to remember that you're a business owner, right? One of the things that I preach heavily is that, when you get into education, when you get into real estate, when you start watching these videos, and if you decide to take those next steps into whatever, mastermind or course or whatever you decide to do to invest in it, you've got to understand that you're not buying a franchise, unless you're buying a franchise, right? But you're not buying a franchise. You are buying the ability to use other people's experience to shorten the time frames that you have between your experimentation and your success. And that is overly important to understand, because what I've seen from a practical standpoint is that the majority of real estate investors that come into this industry kind of treat their LLC as, this is just something between me and having to lose everything as a lawsuit, right? They hear LLC and they're like, well, it's a limited liability corporation company. It always gets squirrely on that last word, not knowing if it's corporation or company. It's company. There's a limited liability company that stands between me and losing everything through a lawsuit, but really it's just an extension of myself. And what I want you guys to understand is that your LLC that you create to go invest is not an extension of yourself. It is now its own thing. It is its own living, breathing thing that you need to work for. That is a company that you have created that you need to work for. And your job is, it's the whole, crap, I'm going to sound like an idiot. Who was it? Was it JFK that said, ask not what your country can do for you? Ask what you can do for your country?
I'm pretty sure that was JFK, but I don't want to sound like a historian over here, but I'm pretty sure that was JFK. Yeah.
I always realize that I'm like geographically inept and I can't do math on anything but a calculator anymore. Like, I'm the biggest idiot, but I know how to buy real estate good, So anyway, it's the whole thing of like, don't ask what your LLC can do for you. Ask what you can do for your LLC. Is a excellent way to think about these items that we're dealing with, because you have a job and you have a responsibility, not just to yourself and to your family, but to this LLC that you've created. You need to pretend like there's a board of directors behind it that's pushing you to get things done, and that you're going to have to report to that board. So when we have something like this hit, it's very natural to get the protection instincts and to kind of suck it all in and to think about, what do I need to do and what's going to happen to me and blah, 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 blah. When like you heard Daniel, as soon as I asked him what's going on, well, within 30 seconds, his answer turned to, hey man, this is worldwide and we got to figure out what's going on over here and over here, right? He's a very external thinker because he's a good business owner. And that's what I want to help you guys to kind of train your mind to hear those differences of how people are talking about it. Because the reality is, when we hit something like this, which we have, your first step needs to be, how do I live without you?
How do we pivot through that? Like, ultimately, we need to figure out how to pivot through this, because, I mean, this being a worldwide pandemic, there's a lot to take into consideration. There's going to be a lot more disrupted than just single-family real estate. There's going to be a lot more disrupted than just, the supply chains, and there's a lot more disrupted than all of that. So when you take all that into consideration, you really have to figure out, not only for you, how is the future going to look, but for everybody that you're working with, how is that going to look for everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. So this market that we've kind of stated, I really encourage you guys to watch that mini series on the stages of a market cycle, because guess what, guys? What did we just hit, Daniel? What stage are we in now?
We just hit early downturn, and that's strongly my opinion. I think
Can you explain that to us?
So one of the things we looked through when we went on the last that last little mini series we did about October of last year, somewhere around there, September, October, somewhere in that range. there's parts to a moving market cycle. You've got the peak, you've got the bottom, you've got all that, but there's stages in between. So when you're at the peak and you're moving out, your initial turn down is what you're going to call your early downturn. And then as you continue moving forward and there's no signs of it popping back anytime soon, that's called your late downturn. And then as you finally start stabilizing at the bottom, that's going to be your it's the bottom, and then you've got early recovery, late recovery, stable, and then late stable, and then you've got the peak again. So we just came out of the peak. We're moving into the early downturn. I don't suspect that stopping anytime soon, and I believe that we're probably going to go through the next 24 months and see this market drop drastically. I don't suspect it to level out till probably 2 to 3 years out from now, but that's my personal opinion.
Right.
I really don't think that anything here is going to level out for at least 2 to 3 years, and I really believe it's going to be 5 years before we get anywhere towards I don't want to say like a moment of clarity, but get to a point where we finally realize that this is it, this is what it's looking like, and we get to a point where people are starting to understand how to navigate this new arena that we're in, and then start stabilizing out from there. I mean,
right, absolutely. And I'm looking for that graph, that we used previously. I used to have it like, right up on call, but I can't find it right now. But what I can do is I can kind of draw this out for you guys to point out, because this is what the market is that we're hitting. And again, I really appreciate the great explanation that you gave to us on to clear that. And I need to share this over to you guys.
Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead and share the screen. So for everybody out there, we're going through a little new technology system here, but it's pretty cool. Like for those that like the way this new set looks, let us know. For everybody that likes seeing, these remote interviews done like that, let us know, because Grant's about to do some really cool stuff with his computer. So when you get that ready, Grant, let me know. We'll get that pulled up here.
Yeah, for sure. So here's what we want to pay attention to, and let me get this out of the way before I have you switch over for us. Okay.
So there we go.
All right. So when we are getting into a situation of a downturn like this, and it doesn't want to get rid of my little live screen on there, does it? There we go. What we're seeing in a normal market cycle is we're seeing something like this, right? For what he was just talking about, you've obviously this is what a cycle is, right? The reason it's called a cycle, in case nobody notices that, is like if you were to come over here and like take this portion of it and just kind of like pivot it like it makes a circle, right? So when we are hitting in a market cycle like this, the thing that we need to be very aware of is that we've just come out of this massive, like huge uprise of everybody having equity, everybody having like just top of the line prices. And so this is our stage 6, okay? Now, when we did that series last year, probably third quarter of last year, I think it was that we ran that, wasn't it, Daniel?
Yeah, I believe it was third quarter that we came through last year, and we were basically saying that we were at stage 6, we were at the peak of a market. And while we didn't obviously predict any sort of worldwide pandemic, we most definitely said that there would be an anomaly that hit that created uncertainty in the market, and through the uncertainty in the market, the market would shift.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we were saying at that point in time is we were telling everybody, this is where we are. And you need to get ready right now in Q3, Q2 of last year. You need to get ready right now to be prepared for when we start to actually see this portion of the cycle hit. And this portion of the cycle is what Daniel was just describing as the stage 1 early downturn. My handwriting is beautiful, isn't it? Oh, I need to make this. Okay. So now we're in this stage 1, right? Now, again, at the bottom, it bottoms out, and then we kind of get back into areas where we're able to appreciate. But one of the things that I really, really liked that Daniel pointed out, and I think, Daniel, you kind of coined this whenever we were doing this in that second quarter of last year, was pointing out that, guys, everybody says, and if we ask you right now, how long should you be holding on to a flip? Everybody kind of has that 6 months kind of thought process, right? But what I really liked that Daniel pointed out is what do you call it, a 7-year flip?
I believe you're
Was
the
that
one that
right?
came up with the name on it, but yeah, it's essentially like the 7-year flip cycle. Everybody wants to jump in at the top of a market and start doing retail flips. Well, when you're at the top of the market, you're paying retail prices. If you want to do retail game, you must learn from retailers and you buy wholesale. So to buy wholesale, you
Right.
buy at the bottom, and that's where you should start your flip cycle.
Absolutely. So right here, we've hit this. Now, this is the market that we're looking at, okay? We know that inventory is going to start becoming more available because of just how cycles work, right? Like, there is going to be more available inventory for us. But the question becomes, well, okay, so if I'm buying a property right here and the property is worth now $120,000, well, it was worth $120,000, whatever it was, 4 years ago or something like that. So if we're buying now and we're going downward, well, crap, I can't buy now and flip it and make money unless I've got this significant discount in there, which you can get, right? We're still getting great discounts. And as a matter of fact, you're going to get better discounts on this stage one because one of the things that you'll hear me say in that video series, if you do go back and watch it, is like the best thing that can happen to us as the real estate investor who's buying these properties at discount is for the sellers to start hearing CNN say that the market is crashing. Because, for right here in stage 6, when everybody had equity, all that sellers have been getting told for the last 5 years is how the market is incredible and we don't care what you bought your house for. Now it's worth $1.5 million, right? And so you go on this appointment and everybody's like, well, but my house, I know what my house is worth. And I get...
Well, that was no fun. Wow. So it looks like I just had my computer go dead on me. I have absolutely no reason why that happened. So, welcome to Windows and live production. So let's see here. What's going on? Apparently the Windows restarting. I'll stay live here for a few seconds and see if I can get that fired back off. It shouldn't take but a few minutes. That was unexpected. So, hey, everybody. Any questions as of right now? Like, I know that I've got close to 120, 130 people watching across all the channels. I've got about 150 people watching right now. So my apologies to everybody that's watching. Drop some questions in while this gets fired back up and everything gets moving on. I'll start answering some questions while I can as I'm trying to deal with this technical issue. Yeah, Colin, I know so I'm running multiple computers here. And one of them that just so happens to be a Windows platform just decided to absolutely crap itself in the middle of the show. It's firing back up, though. As that gets fired back up, I'm going to go ahead and get your questions answered. For anybody over there on the Propelio page, I got 15 likes, but I've got 60 of y'all watching. Can y'all give me some hearts while we get this cleaned up? Can y'all give me some love while I get this going? Haley, yours crashed on you too? Oh man, that's no fun. So give me 2 seconds. I'm going to figure out what's going on here. And I'm going to get this computer fired back up and get back on the live stream. So let me get back on this. We will be back on here in just a second. Dun, 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 boom, boom, boom. There you go. 2 seconds. All right. I have no idea why that happened. I still appreciate that y'all are watching, though. Thank all of y'all. We're getting up there. We're getting going. Join with
There's
computer.
Daniel.
Hey, there you are.
I hear the ring.
I see you there, Grant. You there?
Yeah, I'm here. Are you there?
Yeah, my computer just said it crashed. I got the Windows blue screen of death and it died.
Oh no!
Yeah. So okay, everybody, we're back again. So sorry about that. I appreciate the patience.
Yes,
I appreciate everybody sticking around. So
yeah,
all right.
for sure. I'm like, I don't know if I should keep talking. I think so. That's awesome. That's the beauty of live and technology and doing a stream in the middle of a freaking apocalypse. So thanks for sticking with us, guys. I actually kind of don't remember the last thing that I said.
So on my side, you were talking about moving into early downturn and how properties are worth 124 years ago.
And all that kind of stuff.
And that's about where I lost you.
So now that we have had, and this is what I was saying a second ago, is like, we know that one of the best things that can happen to us in this market is saying, hey, when CNN says that the market is crashed and everything is crap, that's when we start not having to worry so much about the unreasonable expectations and the massive amount of competition, because there is, whether we like it or not, there is this people like to act like they are not buy high and sell low, but that's human nature. You hear everything's good and you get in. You hear everything's bad and you get out, right? And so we're going to have a decrease in our competition here. We're going to have a decrease in how many folks are sending out letters and that kind of stuff. Daniel, I see on the stream here, you might want to move the Zoom little rectangle from the screen that's being shared, because I think it's showing my webcam.
Yeah, but I don't know if I know how to do that. I don't know if I know how to do that.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, I do.
All right, no big deal.
All right, there we go. Didn't know I could do that. See,
so
I'm not that smart.
Getting back into our market turn here, we know now that CNN has said that. Everybody knows that their house is no longer going to be holding that value. So now that we see that the world at large has been told real estate is shifting, the economic stuff is shifting, what you need to ask yourself is, what do I need to be asking myself? Okay. So I would like, again, for you guys to tell me now, what are some questions that you should be asking yourself? Really. And again, this is not a hypothetical, or not hypothetical. What's the word I'm looking for? When I don't want a rhetorical question. I really want you guys to pop in and say, what are some questions that you as an entrepreneur should be asking yourself? So while y'all are putting that, because we are on a delay, I'm going to go through some of the questions that we've got. Matthew Osborne, thanks for being in here. You said, what kind of laws are changing? That's a very interesting question. I don't know of a whole lot right now that's coming down. But the crazy thing is like, so who here has applied for a PPP loan or for the EIDL, EIDL? I'd like to know who in here is.
I applied for the EIDL, I guess, Monday, and it was a real simple, quick process. It took every bit of about 10 to 15 minutes to do. So that wasn't difficult whatsoever. On the PPP side, like I was told by my bank that they weren't quite ready to process that yet. Have you been able to do that on your side yet, Grant?
Yeah, so that's one of the advantages to banking with smaller banks, is that they can move quicker, right? So some of our accounts are with Chase because my partner is in another state, so we've got to have national accounts, and we're buying in different states too. So like, I have to be able to have sellers and people, or buyers, whether wholesale or not, go to a bank and deposit cash in there for their earnest money so that we can do everything remotely. But I also like to keep my accounts open at smaller banks. I use Texas Brand Bank here in DFW. They only have, I think, 3 branches. But on Friday, when the PPP opened, I was able to get a loan application from them for PPP to get things processed out. Now, I will admit I have not gone through and actually done that application, but I have done EIDL. It was incredibly simple. Like you said, it's like a 10 or 15-minute thing. But what laws are changing? We'll see. Right now, the reason I brought that up is like, freaking how easy was that application? And what was the thing that stuck out to me? Do you remember the checkbox that you hit? I'm hoping that you hit at the very end of that. What was that checkbox for? Remember?
I don't remember what the checkbox said. I know that it asked me if I was doing illegal activities and all those other things.
Right. You're like, oh, wait, I mean, in the business or out of the checkbox was, do you want to be considered for us to just give you 10 grand? It's like, yes, I do. So you check that thing off and they freaking give you 10 grand, right? Like that should be hitting our bank accounts in this next few days. The reason I bring that up is that it is such a wild west right now. They are trying to just like, have you ever seen the helicopters on a forest fire that like fly over and just open up a thing of water and just like, and they're just like, let's get some water on this fire as soon as we can. It's kind of where they're at now. Now, part of the reason why I encourage you guys so heavily to go watch, like Propelio did an interview with Matthew Aycock. If you are a member of Creative Cash Flow, we did an exclusive interview with Matthew Aycock in our members group as well. And I encourage you to watch that. And I encourage you to go put that stinking application in, because there is a little bit of an aspect of, we know it's first come, first serve. And they have not yet, I think, thought everything through all the way to a point where it's just like, look, we need to get some stuff on there and then we'll see where it breaks and then we'll fix it from there. But if you can get in before it breaks and there might be a little bit more of relaxed lending available to you, I think you should. I mean, Daniel, what's your view on that side?
I've actually got some really high hopes on that side. Like, that is one of the things that I'm excited about as we speak. So obviously I've been going through the cycle of emotions, like, holy crap, this sucks, and then moving through being like, okay, this is obviously not the exact equation that I was anticipating. So how am I going to move through and deal with that? So after going through all the negative downturn of emotions, I started saying, okay, what's going on? With the release of PPP and idle, I consider that to be, in some cases, the possibility of a big trampoline hitting us. And what do I mean by that? It's like, okay, we've got small businesses getting hit, and they're going to get hit hard. But what was the cap on the PPP? Was it like 2.2 trillion or $2 trillion that they're planning on loaning out at a maximum of $2 million per loan? So on the SBA loans,
so that's the SBA. So just as a brief overview of kind of where these things are, and to throw some numbers out, pop quiz. I want to know if anybody knows what our national, don't Google it, but I want to know if anybody in here knows what our national budget is for the United States of America. I want to know if you can answer that one for me. So pop that into the comments if you've got the answer there. But the total stimulus package is 2.2 trillion. Of that, there's a lot of it going towards big industries like the airlines and like the medical industry and that kind of stuff. Our portion that we can grab is 349 billion with a B. Now, I have contractually obligated myself to always give this example when I say the word billion, because I think that it's so important to understand a scope of this word. Daniel, do you know what I'm about to say? I've said this so many times. I'm curious if I've like just forced you to memorize it because of how often I say it. Do you know my billion example to explain the scope of billion?
I do.
What is it? Can you I'm going to force you to say it so people don't hear me say it all the time.
You break it down into basically, I believe, seconds, how many things it takes, blank, 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 and then finally it equates out to a billion. But overall, yeah, okay, so 349 billion.
The answer here, and the reason I want to go down this is just to give you guys a scope of what's going on, right? So a million seconds is 11 days. All right. So let me then follow that up in asking, how long do you think a billion seconds is? Okay. If 11 days, or if a million is 11 days, how long is a billion? I'm pausing for people to answer because we're on a delay. So I'm not going to be a billion seconds. It's 32 years. Okay. So that's the difference. A million seconds is 11 days. A billion seconds, 32 years. They've got $349 billion set aside for small business owners. The rest of the $2.2 trillion package is partially like the $1,200 checks everybody's going to be getting, or the $1,000 checks, depending on what your adjusted gross income is. But then what we have in here is we have $10 billion set aside purely for that $10,000 grant, right? When you go through the SBA loan, and look up, and actually what I'll do, Ika, do you still have the link available for the EIDL loan application? If you do, could you put that in the comments for everybody? If not, let me know in the Google Doc, and I'll drop that in.
That EIDL loan really isn't the silver lining, in my opinion, not by any means. The EIDL loan being 10 grand really does nothing but cover small businesses for maybe a month or two. So that's not the exciting piece for me at all. Like, what I'm talking about.
Well, but it is, because you said the 2 million thing. The 2 million is EIDL. Right. So PPP
2.2 trillion
is. I'm sorry?
I was talking about the 2.2 trillion. What I'm talking about is SBA PPP loan, where you can get potentially up to 2 million. So
that's EIDL. The 2 million is EIDL, right? So
okay.
So PPP is 2.5 times your monthly expenses, and it's primarily for paychecks. It's the Paycheck Protection Program is why it's PPP, right? So whatever your outgoing payroll is, it gives forgiveness on taxes. Like, you're going to be able to not have to pay some payroll taxes for a while, and whatever your credit card debt is, mortgage interest for the place that you're staying, or rent if you're if you have an office. What your functional, like, I have to have this baseline overhead. That's PPP, and it's 2.5% of whatever your monthly expenses are, with no payments for 6 months. You have a 1% interest rate for a term of 2 years on PPP. The other option is EIDL, and that's the loan that goes up to $2 million. And it also comes with a $10,000 grant as part of it, right? So you apply for it, you say, I want 10 grand, and then they look at your application and see how much they will be willing to give you of that 2 million. It is up to 2 million. And then that is a 3.75% APR for a 30-year term. So those are the two packages on that, PPP and EIDL. But that being said, that is something that you guys need to be applying for, because that's where you were saying, like, that's the thing that excites you, is this $2 million possible loan that you're able to get. So forgive me for being pedantic. I don't know, too detailed in that. Go ahead and finish your thought process there.
Well, I appreciate that, Grant. So the process, or the point I'm trying to make on that side of it, is small businesses, yes, they're going to get hit, but what would it feel like is if a massive amount of small businesses got an influx of capital? And if they're going to be loose with those purse strings, and they're going to allow some of these businesses to come in and get access to capital, especially at such a great term, 30-year, low interest, great loans, how could that possibly springboard our economy back up some? So with the availability of loose capital, a lot of people applying for it, is that a small silver lining that may actually help us pull back out of this a little faster than expected? Because if without that, like, there really is no bottom. I see it's just going to hit and hit hard. But if they're able to really push those loans out and get a lot of capital into small businesses' hands, that might be what jumpstarts America back up again. And that does kind of have me excited.
I agree, man.
Detailed on that side, but on that side, it does make me excited that availability of capital may actually still be there. So,
absolutely. And again, it's a first come, first serve. We've got $349 billion, but you know what? I've even heard it from, or the SBA on the Treasury's website says, like in so many words, they literally are like, look, it's first come, first serve, and you should get in sooner than later, because this is probably not going to cover everybody who needs it. So if I can just encourage you guys, go watch that interview that Propelio has it on. Is it in the Propelio group, right? Or is it on the Propelio actual, like, Propelio app page?
So it's on Propelio TV through YouTube, as well as in the Propelio group. We went live with Matt Aycock, so just search Matt Aycock Propelio, and you'll find that, where he discusses how all that works.
So get in there now, and then talk to your bankers on PPP. If you bank with Chase, they're still not ready, but you can at least put your name in line if you go to chase.com/cares, because it's the CARES Act that put it together. Sorry, it took me a second to go through that. That will be where you can see when they're ready. They're also going to update their Twitter. If you're with a small banking institution, reach out to your banker themselves and get your application moving on that. Do that. Let's move on to the next portion, which I'm thankful many people have popped in their answers on this, right? So the question is, knowing that, hey, here we are, we're in a situation where we're at early downturn. We've got a lot of stuff happening in this next stage that's going to change how we have to look at our market. My request of you guys was, what questions should you, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, which questions should you be asking yourself? And so we got a lot of really good questions in. So one of the questions that we get in here is, what kind of laws are changing? One of the questions that we get in here, what price percentage? I'm like super blocking this. Y'all are about to get really tripped out. Watch this. I'm going to go here. Whoa. And we just like, and we're back. All right. What price percentage should we be buying at as wholesalers? I think is a great question you need to be asking yourself. We also got that repeated in a couple down here. How will we know when we hit the bottom and are entering early recovery? What are the best leads to go out over right now? I am hearing that flipping small businesses in the next few years will be like houses in 2011. Can you get someone to train on how to buy and flip a small business? I want to address that here in just a second. Should we be buying flips at 70% still? This is similar to that other question. I'm in Houston, and a few people have spoken with aren't flipping anymore. My thoughts are to start buying at 60% from Dominique. Can buyers of owner financed deals give back the property or surrender it back to the seller versus a foreclosure? Okay, so really good questions, guys. So I'm going to kind of power through some of these things, because what I do want to do at the end of this is spend a little bit of time on where should you be spending your time. Some of the feedback that I get from students is they, unanimously love the content. Sometimes they want more of the like, well, give me what's a 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And that can be very difficult. And this is one of the reasons why I stress that you've not purchased into a franchise. You're getting education for you to make decisions as a business owner. And that's what we want to equip you to do. Because if we train you how to think about the business, you're going to have a better trajectory long term than if you just get answered. Like if we only tell you, I don't know, what an extreme example, right? Like go send some postcards out with this postcard, right? But you don't know why you're sending postcards. You don't know who you're sending postcards to. You don't know why certain words are being used. You don't know what a call to action is. That postcard campaign might do really well for a while, but 3 years from now, if things shift, you're not going to be able to use the principles like, hey, every piece of marketing needs a call to action. Hey, I need to put, whatever I want them to go to, my phone number or my email or whatever that is. Right, if you don't have those principles, then you're dead in the water 3 years down the road. So we try to do an equal amount of giving you some theory, giving you some application. We'll be moving into application after hitting these questions. Now, this last one right here is interesting. Can buyers of an owner-financed deal give back the property or surrender it back to the seller versus a foreclosure? And the answer is yes. So what you're referring to would be called a deed in lieu, L-I-E-U, a deed in lieu of foreclosure, okay? And I highly recommend that anytime that you have somebody who is struggling with payments and you might be going down the road of foreclosure with them, I highly recommend that you very much encourage them to explore the deed in lieu of foreclosure. I'm doing that with one of my properties right now. What it does is it basically waives all of the complexities of going through a foreclosure process, and it allows them to say, look, I'm going to be real with you. There's no way I'm going to continue paying this thing, and I don't want a foreclosure to show up on my record. I would rather just deed the property back to you instead, which is also part of the I don't want to call it a negotiation. A part of the information that you should be presenting to them if you are presenting the deed in lieu is that we are not going to actively go and report this foreclosure. Right? We are not going to go out and say this person got foreclosed on and we're putting it on their credit report. If we take a deed in lieu, then we just take the deed and we go from there. Now, we have no control over if there's a third party of some sort that searches through deed records to find that. And for some reason they report that. I don't have control over that. But it's a better chance of not having this kill your foreclosure than if it is a full-blown actual foreclosure with a normal foreclosure process and documentation going public. So that can be one reason why they get into it. The next thing that I want to address, which would be very quick on these questions, and by the way, thank you guys so much for putting these questions in here, because this is exactly what we need to be doing, is exposing what business owners think during this crisis, because it's going to help other people to think, oh, wow, I didn't think about it like that, and maybe get their question or like train of thought going on that side. The other thing I wanted to look at was this one right here. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. This one right here. I'm hearing that flipping small businesses the next few years will be like houses in 2011. Can you get someone to train on how to buy and flip a small business? So I want to address this first, and then I want to pass this over, Daniel, to you to talk about for a second, because I think that sometimes we have a differing view on this particular principle I'm going to talk about, and I think that both are equally valid, okay? So my view of moving into a different asset class, whatever that asset class might be, is that you need to be very careful of knowing what you are and are not good at, okay? One of the things that I will have commonly asked of me, so we're on a trajectory right now, my team, to where by 2023, we'll be doing about 1,000 houses a year. That's a lot, right? We've got, and this is one of the reasons why we want to get in front of you guys, because we've got answers right now. Like I've got 18 properties that we've taken down in these last few weeks, ready for sale, that aren't killing me because of how we're structuring our deals with creative financing and all that kind of stuff. So you've got to be able to pay attention when numbers like that are getting thrown out of what is the action that is going behind those kinds of results. Now, one of the things, even in some of the high-end masterminds that I'm in, because we spend about 50 grand a year on masterminds themselves, I will commonly get people who are in multifamily and they're like, bro, why are you doing 1,000 single families in a year instead of just doing like 1,000 unit apartment complex, right? And my answer is that I know what I'm good at, and I'm good at single family houses that sell for under $250,000. That's what I know. That's what my business is built around. So there's somewhat of a hubris involved to say, hey, because I'm good at doing this business of single family properties under $250,000, that means that I will also be good at condos or at, whatever else you want to do, multifamily, storage units, business flipping. Yes, many of the principles are going to overlap, but do you go to a world champion, hockey player and say, well, hey, why don't you, if you're in hockey, you're having to play how many games and you're getting beat up all day? Shoot, Tiger Woods made 10 times what you did, and he's just using a stick with a hook at the end of it to hit a ball into a goal. Like, why don't you just do that instead? Well, it's a completely different sport, and your fine tuning is completely different on both sides, even though many of the principles are going to overlap, like your center of gravity and your swing speed and all that kind of stuff. It's a different sport. So I've known too many people to go bankrupt and heard too many stories of the hubris that goes behind, well, I'm really good at this one, therefore I'm going to jump into this one, which is actually not at all the same thing. And I would very much encourage you to be aware of that before jumping into something like that. Daniel, what's your take on, should we, be looking at flipping small businesses?
I've got my opinion on that, and that is if you aren't currently running a very well streamed and profitable business, then you probably don't know how to acquire one that's not and flip it around. So if you don't have the business experience to do that, you're really just chasing the next shiny object, because in this same downturning cycle where business opportunity is going to come on the rise, so will real estate opportunity. So if you already know real estate, trying to jump and go to a different asset class that you don't have the experience in and trying to learn that is just taking away from your core competency. Like this is one of the things that is interesting about info sales, is they're always looking for the next thing to sell you. And while yes, business opportunity to flip is coming up soon, if you already know an asset class and you already know how to perform within that asset class, jumping to a new one just because that's what the info sales market's trying to push isn't what I would consider to be the wise thing to do.
Yeah, man, I love that take on it. It's similar to like, so often we hear people, they want to buy some huge course about how trusts are going to be their, saving grace on something, right? This trust is going to keep you from having to do on sale clause. This trust thing is going to keep you from having anybody ever sue you. This trust, because trusts are complicated and very few people understand it. Info marketers are able to exploit that in you and say, I have this golden thing that you will never know without me. So you've got to pay me a bunch of money to get to that. That's going to happen anytime that there is a new and shiny object. So you've got to focus on that. Now, 2 more minutes, and then we'll go back or then we'll kind of land the plane on where we feel you should be spending your time right now. But Daniel, how do you not reconcile, that's the wrong way to put that, but like, where would you compare that question and that answer up against some of what we've talked about previously of, man, I wish I had gone bigger, smaller, or I'm sorry, bigger, smaller. I wish I had gone bigger sooner. And like you've expressed interest in like multifamily, going from the single family world and that kind of stuff. Do you have, what's your opinion? Is that a different question to you, or do you have the same view on both sides?
On my side, when people ask me, I always refer back to I invest in numbers. And if I'm in an asset class and the numbers aren't feeling good to me right now, I'm not going to shy away and say that I'd look at a different asset class. All of those things combined, I've historically been willing to just jump in the fire. And while I understand that hockey and golf are two totally different sports, if I felt like my best opportunity is in golf, I would definitely consider moving that direction. Now, that's a fairly large leap to take into consideration, but if I am doing single family homes and I see a really solid opportunity in multifamily, I invest in numbers. I have the confidence in my network. I have the confidence in my resourcefulness that taking down something like a multifamily complex is only going to strengthen me in the long run. Like if I run my numbers, I always run them in 3 ways. What's my best case scenario, most probable scenario, and my worst case scenario? If I'm looking at a different asset class and my worst case scenario, even with my lack of education, says that my worst case scenario is still really close to break even, and then I can find other people that are willing to support that, then I'm definitely moving in on that just because of limited risk, maximum opportunity. Let's move. And I don't really get caught up in, well, I'm a single family investor. I'm more so a real estate investor that is moving forward.
Now, I think that this is a huge aspect that we need to discuss. I think this is one of the better questions for a entrepreneur to be thinking at this point in time. Not specifically, hey, I've heard small businesses are the thing to flip specifically, but specifically saying, hey, is the thing that I have done for the past however many months or years still going to be the thing that I should be doing moving forward? That is a huge question you need to be asking yourself. That's going to have a completely different answer. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I love that question. I mean, that's
thank you. Yeah,
I think that's the best question that could be asked right now is what I have done still going to work, and should I be moving towards a different target? Because cycles are moving, so your target is moving, and if you're not paying attention to where you're at in the cycle, you could really quickly find yourself in a bad situation if you're not willing to pivot and move fast.
So one of the things that I did very early on, like before the quarantine and stay-at-home charges were even made, in our Thursday like deal analysis workshop with my executives group, the mastermind group, I called an audible and I said, look, we're not going to be doing a deal analysis today. We're going to talk about Corona the whole time. And we're going to talk about, like, as a business owner, what do you need to be thinking about? These same questions I asked you, like, what questions should you be asking yourself? And this is why we do this kind of exercise, is because, like we saw from Luis Mendez, thank you for that great, I'm sorry, no, that wasn't Luis that did that. Well, yes, Luis had a great question as well.
Barrera.
Yeah, Mr. Barrera. Excuse me as I die. I don't have it. I don't have the Rona. I promise. I swallowed wrong. The fact that this got pulled out in this exercise is why we do those types of exercises, because you do need to be answering that question for yourself. Now, to wrap that up, when you ask that question of yourself, the biggest problem with asking that question is that people forget how freaking hard it was to get to where they are right now. Okay, that's what happens. So here's the typical shiny syndrome or shiny object syndrome activity. What typically happens with any shiny object is you spend however long working on your strategy, right? Let's say 6 months, because very commonly, like we commonly as entrepreneurs that I've interacted with have kind of the 6 month timeline before wanting to look for another shiny object. And then you see, oh man, tax sales. That guy's making a lot of money in tax sales. Maybe I should, oh man, sub 2. That guy's making a lot of money in sub 2. And so what you end up doing is 6 months into the strategy you already decided you were going to work for that year, saying, well, I'm going to switch and I'm going to start looking at this strategy because it's easy. And that's going to be the thing that, like, with complete disregard and disrespect to the fact that it took you 6 months to get to that point on the strategy you were already working with. So then what happens is you spend 6 months figuring out that strategy has just as many complicated questions, if not more, just as many, if not more complicated reasons why it might fail, right? What was presented to you by the info marketer is the best case scenario. And you're like, holy crap. But now it took you 6 months to find that out about this other strategy. So now you're left wondering, well, crap, I'm in the exact same spot I was 6 months ago where things are not exactly great. I really want this thing to work and it's not. Well, now do I do this new one I've just spent 6 months on, or do I go back to the last one that I had 6 months on? And grass is always greener on the other side. So if you are going to pick up another strategy in the sense of like what Daniel was saying on, hey, I invest in numbers. If the numbers are good over here, that's what I'm going to do. Well, guess what? When Daniel takes down a new asset class, Daniel cuts back significantly on what he was doing on the other asset class in order to give proper respect to the new one that he's about to do, because what he understands that he has done is created a new business that is also going to require fostering in all of the same business principles that the other one did. But he's making an educated decision to say, hey, I put this much effort into this strategy, and if I put that much effort into this other one and I treat that one like my baby, just like I did this one, and I see it all the way through to the end, I think that my ceiling is going to be higher over here. Therefore, I'm going to basically pivot fully, get my baseline needs out of this one, and put my main focus over here on this one, because this one has a higher ceiling for me and the community around me. Would that be an accurate way of describing how you look at this stuff, Daniel, or not? Would you correct me?
Say that because I think it's very important. One of my biggest struggles starting out, and it was a struggle for close to 4 to 5 years. And it took a lot of mistakes to finally realize my flaw in that was I was trying to spread my time way too thin. I was trying to do 5 different things at once, which meant I was doing 4 of the 5 really poorly and one of the things kind of poorly. If you're really going to take anything and win with it, you need to pick one thing and just stick to it. And like when I say stick to it, it's not like 6 months, okay, that didn't work, let's go somewhere else. You need to stick with it until you're successful. Because if you see someone else, like you see a Grant Kemp that's out there just killing it doing sub 2, and you're like, okay, I'll do sub 2 as well. And then you do it for 6 months, you're like, okay, that didn't work, I'm gonna go somewhere else. Well, you know what? It does work. You just didn't stick with it long enough. You didn't realize that Grant Kemp took 3 years to get there, and you tried doing it in 6 months. Now, can you hire a mentor and leapfrog in some ways? Most definitely. But you have to stick with it. So like whenever I do switch an asset class, I just accept that I'm going to start winding my other affairs down and then start putting all of my eggs into that basket. Because if I don't, I'm not going to pay attention to 5 things equally as well. So until you get to a point where you can automate and establish and run that business with limited involvement on your behalf, then anything you do to throw onto that basket with it is just going to distract you and cause everything to equally go down. So yeah, if I do switch, it's 100%. I'm all in.
So I'm about switching, and here's the thing, straight up, many of us are going to need to switch things up right now. I'm very fortunate that, as Daniel and I went through this stuff Q2 and Q3 last year, I basically turned my entire company on its head. I let go of my entire staff. I redid everything to completely go over into a national and virtual buying model, which thank God turned out to be the right decision, because for right now, like we bought a house yesterday, we sold a house last week, even with shelter in place laws. We're doing everything from our house. We are not going to houses and doing stuff. There's very few instances that we've had to go to a house to do something. I think we've actually had to at least send somebody to a house maybe twice in this entire shelter in place. So you should have like I completely switched that over, but I knew when I did that, and again, not to slap people in the head with Bible. I don't want to do that, but I just also don't want to shield the realities of where my decision processes come from. It's like I spent a long time in prayer with speaking to God about this and asking for wisdom on it. I spent a lot of time with my wife because I knew that by doing what we were about to do, shutting everything down, firing everybody, completely turning the model on its head, getting new partners, hiring new people, all that kind of stuff, it's starting a new business. And that's what I did 10 years ago, right? But I knew going into it, it was going to have to take that same level of respect to become successful, and that my wife had to be on board with that, and that I had to feel like that was the right decision for me to make for my family. And so we did make that pivot. Now, many of you are getting hit in the face right now with a force of that pivot. With, holy crap, my marketing isn't working anymore. One of my students in the executives group, so Ronnie will do a pulse call every so once in a while with everybody that is in the executives or accelerators group, just to kind of see how things are going, how we can better help, and he was like, man, this last year, I made my entire income off of the foreclosure list. And guess what people can't do right now? People can't foreclose. So I'm kind of lost. I don't know what the heck to do anymore, because my entire model revolved around this one piece of marketing, which is no longer literally in existence. Basically, I say literally, figuratively, literally. So he's going to have to pivot some stuff. He's going to have to figure that out. Now, next week, Ronnie is going to do an exclusive. So what we're doing is, like, my team, my real estate team, has taken a lot of stuff off of my plate so that I can be more available to be on the camera right now for everybody, because we really do. I know it sounds cheesy, but it's absolutely true. We really do feel like an ethical responsibility of, hey, there's a lot of people who are about to lose their shirt and lose their ability to be in a real estate investment company. And we have answers, and we are buying houses and selling houses right now. So like, we have a responsibility of sharing that knowledge with people, because not everybody can do that right now. And we can, fortunately. So they've taken a lot of stuff on. They're all working overtime so that I can be available for this stuff. Part of why they're doing that is that we're doing exclusive videos on the Creative Cash Flow members page, like having that in last week. 2 weeks ago, I spent an hour and a half just talking about generalities of the corona and giving the coronavirus, and giving people specific negotiation phrases and tools that have been working for us with the shelter in play, and how to handle contracting deals and stuff like that. Obviously, anybody who hasn't watched that, if you are a member, you can go back and watch the replays of all of this. This week, I'll be talking about private capital raising, because I think that is the answer, the biggest answer to all of this, is proper private capital raising. Because why does the market, what is it Daniel, as somebody who's done well in the stock market, when we see and we hear about the stock market crashing, what action is it that has caused that crash to occur? What have investors done specifically that caused the crash to occur?
I am by no means an expert on the market, but I do appreciate that you think so. That taken into consideration, it's uncertainty, in my opinion. And anytime uncertainty moves into play, people want to start pulling away. And by all means, on that side, the stock market moving down, it's been doing a lot of roller coastering because you've got an equal amount of bears and bulls. People are like, okay, it's at discount, I'll buy now. And then you see the Federal Reserve pumping out news information. You see policies getting put into place that create euphoria. That euphoria goes in and says, all right, it's at a discount, it's going to go back up. We buy back in, and it just keeps roller coastering up and down. But I don't think that roller coaster up and down on the euphoria highs of highlight news is going to last. The roller coaster is uncertainty, and through that uncertainty, the VIX went through the roof. With the VIX going through the roof, there's just going to be a lot of movement over there, and I don't think it's going to last. I think it's going to continue with the volatility that finally works its way and ratchets down. But I'm not an expert on that by any means.
For sure, and that is an absolutely honest and true answer, I believe. The simplified answer of where I was kind of going with this is that and again, I don't have any stocks. The only stock I've ever bought was in the last crash when American Airlines went down to 8 cents a share. I bought a bunch of American Airlines and I sold it at 24 cents a share, right? Like I was like, there's no way American Airlines is going out of business at 8 cents a share. It will go up. And you know what I mean? Like that's the only stock I've ever done. But my understanding, which could be wrong, Daniel, I'd actually like you to correct me if I am wrong on this because I'm an idiot. My understanding is that the thing that makes a valuation of a stock go down is that people pull. They sell. So if there's more selling than buying, people are pulling their cash out of it, and the stock valuation goes down. Is that correct?
That sounds extremely valuable. I mean, viable, and because when you flood the market with people looking to sell, it's going to drive the property down. I mean, they have to sell it for it to go down, but there's going to be people that are just flooding the market with assets, and in my opinion, that's what pushes it down. But once again, I'm not a stock market investor. I know enough about it to get me in trouble.
So the panic selling implies that the stock market went down to 18,000. The whatever index they use that they talk about. I was going to say it like I'm smart, but I don't even know. I think it's the Dow Jones. Went down to 18,000. I don't know. Anyway, went down super low because people pulled their cash. They said, I want to be cash heavy right now. I do not want my money in the market because that makes me nervous. So they pull all their cash out. Well, what does that mean? That enough people just pulled cash out of the stock market to destroy the stock market and are now sitting on piles of cash. Guess what, guys? You're a real estate investor. What do you need to buy a house? You need some cash,
kind of liquidity,
right? So now there's all these people around you who have just pulled tons of cash out, and you need cash to go buy houses so that you can outperform all your competitors who do not have that cash. So if we want to talk about actionable things that you need to be doing right now, is you need to shift your efforts into many different areas, but one of which I think is the most important personally is talking to people about placing capital for them. Because there's going to be a lot of people. I guarantee you, this is my guarantee that I will have zero problem guaranteeing to everyone. You would be surprised by how many people around you have a lot of money in their bank account and you had no clue. You would absolutely be shocked. Once you start talking to people as a person who has a place-to-place capital with great returns, which is asset-backed, and going to still be a tangible item even in the bottom of the crash, you will start finding out that people have money that they want to place with you, and you need to have that conversation. That is a giant action item that you guys are going to need to shift into with this new market, because if you raise capital the right way, then you can have stockpiles of cash available for you to go buy houses that nobody else can buy, at discounts that nobody else can buy, with terms that are hugely favorable for both your lender and you, in a way that's going to help you survive through this. So that's going to be one of the huge ways. So like this week on Friday, I'm going to be talking about raising private capital in that way, because we do. This sounds very like gooey. I'm sorry. But it's true. Like, I am doing a private capital model that I know enough people nationally, and I know enough folks that know enough folks nationally. Nobody has known somebody else to do it in this way, and it is just massive for both you and the lender. So we'll be talking about raising capital that way. The other thing you need to be doing is shifting your marketing strategy. And how is it, like we were referred to the student of mine that has all of his models come through foreclosures, and he's not giving foreclosures anymore. How do you test a new marketing? How do you not how do you test a new market, but how do you test a new marketing campaign? You don't want to throw $50,000 at a marketing campaign to say maybe, right? So you want to have a system. What is the strategy behind marketing strategy? And that's one of the things that you guys really need to be considering, is that if your KPIs are going down, you need to be very aware of that. KPI being a key performance indicator. How many calls per letter, or how many letters does it take to get a phone call? How much money are you spending per closing? All those kinds of things. If you are seeing those deplete and go down, which is not good, you need to be looking for another way to get the same numbers you used to get. So you need a strategy to testing that marketing strategy. Be paying attention to that. Be paying attention to not just wasting money on a strategy, but feeling out in your market if that makes sense. Ronnie's going to do that class for everybody next week. Daniel, what's another thing that people need to be?
I got some pretty heavy questions for you on that, because we're really just kind of touching on the top side of topics and not really getting into them. So with that to be said, let's try and get into a topic. You're talking about raising private capital right now. There's a lot of money fleeing away from the stock markets, and that people are sitting on stockpiles of cash. Where do you expect that stockpiles of cash to go? Why do you think they're moving to liquidity, and what do you think they're wanting to do with it? And then moving beyond that, if you are raising the capital, what are you planning on doing with it? Where are you planning on investing it?
Yeah, so absolutely. So where do I think that the stockpiles of cash are going is in people's bank accounts, scared to know what they're supposed to do with it.
Okay. Do you not think those same people are scared about real estate? Because all we're talking about right now is that we're moving into a buyer's market, and if those people are nervous and scared about their capital in the stock market, those people are hearing the exact same thing in the news about the real estate market. So what would your plans be for talking to these people and saying, hey, I know the stock market's got you scared, but real estate's the greatest thing to be in right now, even though you're hearing on the news that real estate is likely going to take the same hit with foreclosures. Why should you invest with me?
Yeah, that's an incredible question to ask. I mean, that is absolutely what you need to be figuring out, because the problem right now is uncertainty, right? Like you stated earlier, uncertainty is a huge issue. And so there's uncertainty in the market, and in the market means in the market, wherever somebody's going to be putting their money. So your job is to, be honest about it, right? Do you really have the ability to place capital in a good fashion, which I believe you do. If you're watching this video, and you should have a way to go out there and buy houses in such a way that makes sense. A couple of the questions to preface this, a couple of the questions that we got in for the what questions should entrepreneurs be asking, which, by the way, I want to point out, we're going to be using those questions. I'm going to be using that to kind of spark some of this next series that we are doing on Corona. So please keep asking those questions, because we will address those as entire topics in weeks upcoming.
Well, we're about an hour
one
into
of the,
this right now.
I'm sorry?
We're about an hour into this right now.
Yeah. No, I know. That's why I'm saying is like that, because I can't answer all those questions. We're gonna do actual episodes on some of these other questions. I'm just encouraging them to keep answering. If they have questions, we will get those answered over the upcoming weeks. But in the side of properly raising capital, is that we have to understand that we have an ability to get an asset-backed loan. A couple of these questions were based off of what should my buying criteria be, like as far as are we still buying at 70 cents? Ours has lowered. We were buying at 65 cents. We're now making offers in the 50-cent range, low 50s, right? We do want to get a little bit more protection because of, when we're talking about being here in this like downturn cycle, we want to be ready for what's going to happen here. Now, the key thing, the mysterious thing that I'm alluding to here is when we are raising the capital with an investor who has just pulled their cash out and they are concerned about what's happening here. One thing is we got to have that discount, so it makes sense, but the seller's more willing to give the discount anyway. So good, we're there. We meet that fear, right? What's another fear that the investor is going to have is, well, I don't want this asset to, completely lose value. Well, most people in my experience, I've not had people that I have spoken to who have pulled money from the stock market who were not overly excited and thinking, well, stocks are bad, I should go into real estate, right? I've not had that experience. I've not run into people who have said stocks are bad, therefore so is every other investment. The experience that I have had, because of just the majority of how people's minds think, in my opinion, is just like we were saying, we saw earlier. It's like, hey, I've heard flipping small business is going to be good. The grass is always greener on the other side. So somebody who has just been burned in the market of stocks has also, most likely, I will bet, had the thought process at one point in time, man, should I be heavier in real estate than stocks? Stocks are volatile. Real estate makes more millionaires than anybody else has. So then when they get burned over here by the stock market and they're sitting on cash, what I have found is that they're overly ready for a real estate option to replace that, because they don't want to be sitting on their money. Now, the other fear that you have to address, and this is the thing that separates out our private capital raises from others, is that the fear of non-payment, right? If they're going to invest in you, which they are, as a private lender, they are investing in you just as much as they are the asset. If they're going to invest in you, they want to make sure that they're going to get that money is making money. Now, the thing that we are separating ourselves out with is how we are structuring that debt with our lender to where they are making money on their money, even if we are not paying the payments, okay? And that's why I'm saying that it is a twofold benefit, because the way that it is structured out in our note and mortgage or deed of trust, depending on the state, is that the lender's debt is accruing and making money, but we are not having to make that payment, which keeps us liquid, keeps us able to buy assets, and then we're essentially bringing the lender in as a profit participant, and they get a share of the profits that we're getting on this deal for deferring the payments on that property, even though the payments were accruing interest. So to your point of, hey, we're about an hour in, this is why I wasn't necessarily planning to go super deep into it, because it is complicated. It's a big topic, but I am going to go fully through that this Friday for Creative Cash Flow members. And then we can talk more about this on other weeks, but that's the key to it, is that we're addressing the fear of, hey, stock market's not where I want to be. We're addressing the desire of, but I don't want my cash to just be sitting there idle. We're addressing the fear of, well, but if I lend it to this person, I might not get paid. And we're addressing the fear of, well, even if I don't get paid, I want to make sure, because if I am long-term enough, which most people are long-term enough to understand that, hey, let's take an extreme example. Let's say that you lend right here, and the stinking thing never makes money the entire time, all the way. But everybody knows what a cycle looks like, right? It may make money up here, but if it's accrued interest this entire time, and the payoff now reflects that interest, and the payoff reflects a profit participation, that is a huge benefit to a private lender. And we need to be presenting that to people, because we have that option to do that. And this is what allows us to buy a lot of houses right here. So I know that's a little bit involved, and I know that's not enough involved, but I'm trying to be cognizant of the amount of time that we've been in this and the topic that we're trying to stick to. Does that answer questions for you, Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, the topic we're trying to stick to, I believe, is just kind of the current state of affairs. And if we're going to start talking about people needing to raise capital in this current environment, let's talk about it. If that's what we're going to do, are you placing this capital with second position liens? Are you using this to cash out the first position lien and then wrapping it? What are your thoughts on all of that? Are you just doing what you need to do? So on that side. So is that what you're suggesting people would use that capital for? Because if we're seeing a shifting market, is that where we're going?
Yeah, so I think that you need to be, the action items and the action items that I think need to be happening is, yes, spending more time on private capital raising. Understanding that capital can go to a first lien or a second lien. It depends on the lender, and it depends on the deal as to if it makes sense on that. But my goal, my desire is always to wrap that loan. That's always my desire. If I'm getting long-term money, I want to wrap that loan. I should say it's always my desire. It's almost always my desire. I don't really like rentals. We picked up a few rentals for reasons that make sense for those rentals, but that's what we're trying to do here, right? But even amongst that, right? I'm wholesaling still. I'm not doing flips. I don't really like flipping. I haven't liked flipping for about a year, but wholesaling, that's big too. But you don't need cash for wholesaling and wholetailing, that kind of thing. You do need cash for taking deals down into your portfolio. And when you take it down into your portfolio, my position is that doing it as an owner financed sale is the best way to go, because I want to kind of lock in. Again, if we look at this cycle, I want to lock in the price, because if we can sell within even 4 to 6 months of buying, we bought at a big enough discount, even drops in prices should not mean that we're underwater on that deal, right? Ideally, hopefully, but it should not mean that we're underwater on the deal. So you should still have room to lock that price and payment in. And if the payment goes down below what makes sense, then you would hold it for a rental until you can get back up here, a rental or a flip to get back up here to the other side. So that capital that comes in needs to be used in multiple different ways. When I talk about not shifting models and not shifting asset classes, I want to be very clear. I'm talking about not shifting asset classes. Within single family, I think you should know how to wholesale and wholetail and flip and owner finance and rent and like all of the strategies therein. And 3 weeks ago, I mixed wholesaling and owner financing together, and I made a $49,000 upfront profit on a property that's going to give us a $280 cash flow for 30 years off of my wholesale buyers list, and I used private money to get there with, right? So you should have to be able to know all of these things within an asset class and mix them together. So I hope that wasn't too abstract, but when you ask, what are you doing with the cash? The answer is everything. Any way that you can buy a house should be the way that you buy that house when you've done your capital raising.
Okay, so we've pushed through quite a bit on this, on this episode. We've gone through and we've seen and talked about quite a bit. Moving into the next episode, because we are sitting at about an hour and 20 minutes into this, what are we going to talk about on the next episode? Because me personally, I'd like to talk about that, because if you're raising capital and then you're going to place that capital into strategies such as subject to and wraps, I would like to hear your opinion on that, because I know that historically your opinion on the due on sale clause has been pretty solid. My opinion on that has shifted considerably, and while we may now have opposing points of view, I wouldn't mind debating that, because I'm quite concerned about the due on sale clause now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's worth having the discussion about. My desire was, with this last segment, talk about ways that you should be spending your time in more of an abstract view, and then using the upcoming weeks to actually dive into those a little bit more, kind of what you alluded to with the private capital there. So the two main things that I want to get her, and I want to add a third thing before we move into that, is A, you should be looking at private capital. B, you should be looking at how you are getting your results from your marketing campaigns and how you're going to fix your model to apply to what this market is right now. What do you need to be looking at? And lastly, I think you need to be spending some time doing education right now. You've heard me in the past on Grant Teach Me Something talk about, like, preaching about, like, hey, education is not the thing that's going to make you money. And that's still true, right? Like, you're not, if you are watching this video, you're not currently doing an RGA, like a revenue generating activity, something that is selling a house or buying a house. But right now, when everything is shifting around, you do need to be very informational you do need to be seeking the information, but you got to be ready to take action on that information. So don't spend too much time on that. So those are going to be the three major things that I want you to do. Is think about your marketing campaigns and what their KPIs are. Again, we're going to go into these things in the upcoming weeks. Think about raising more private capital and what you can do on that market. It sounds like we want to do that next week. And then also thinking about, or just getting out there and listening to what people are doing right now and where they are getting their successes. So, yeah, absolutely. We can go into that next week. We can go into the due on sale clause next week. Part of, again, why I wanted people to ask questions in here is, if we're getting common questions, those will be inspirations for topics that we will handle in upcoming weeks, because I want you guys to get the information that you feel like you need, as well as us giving you the information that we know that you need.
Well, it sounds like some fun. So for everybody, I know it's been a long segment. My apologies on that side, but let's wrapping it up. Any final thoughts, any final things to say? Grant, over there?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to, again, as always, just really give credit to Propelio for putting this stuff on, for building the community that you guys have. I think it's super important that if you were watching this video, that you check out Propelio. Go to Propelio.com. There is the Propelio Academy, which has just tons of education. I mean, we're talking about education here. I've seen tons of posts going into the Propelio group about how people are out there in quarantine, have some time to watch some videos, and they're being blown away by the education they're getting there. So go to Propelio.com/academy. Check that out. It is all free. You sign up with an email, and that's it. You get access to full-blown courses all the way through. But all of these wheels turn because of Propelio.com, and you should really be looking at that. You got leads, you got CRM, you got the websites, and then just everything, like in the comps, every tool that you might need to become successful in this is a great support system for you, from the actual practical tech side of things that you need for that support system. And then lastly, CreativeCashflow.com. Obviously, I'm Grant Kemp from CreativeCashflow.com. That is where we push out our education. So if you like the way that I think about things, you like the way that I'm teaching things, go to creativecashflow.com slash memberships. I am running 50% off right now during this so that more people have chances to get in. If you do all caps COVID 50, there's a discount because we do, again, have an ethical desire to get answers in front of you. But I did a huge course on subject 2 in the Propelio Academy that you can go watch for absolutely free, and it teaches you start to finish on how to sub 2. And that's going to be a huge part of this next downturn. You guys are going to need to understand is how to buy creatively. So I'd encourage you to watch that as well. Is there anything you wanted to end up on, Daniel?
No, I feel pretty good over here. I'm looking forward to the next segment because I really want to see how that evolves. I want to see what your opinions are on it because it's got me pretty well concerned about all of the subject to strategy as a whole. So if you can give me some feedback on that, I'd be very glad to hear what that sounds like.
Yeah. Well, I think that would probably be the best thing for us to do next week. So I'll go ahead and let's commit that. Next week we're going to talk sub 2 and creative financing and things like due on sale clause because that is going to be such a huge part of before you have capital available to you, you still have sub 2 available to you, and the question you should be asking is, should I use it? Right? Is kind of what you're alluding to.
Yeah, because I mean, with nothing but greed and that being taken into consideration, sub 2 might get decimated. And if sub 2 absolutely gets decimated, I don't want to see all these people get hurt from it. So I think it's something that needs to be discussed. You're a brilliant man. You've read a lot of laws. I'd be very curious to hear what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll beat that up next week. So guys, thank you so much for joining us. This has been awesome to have this format. Let us know what you think about the format. Adding too. Drop it in the comments how you feel about this. Us doing this remote thing with everything. I hope that you guys enjoyed that. If there's something that's particularly sticks out to in your mind as being a big aha takeaway for you, also drop that in because again, it helps us shape what we're doing to be most useful for you. So Daniel, thanks for having me on. I'm glad we're getting this pumped back up again, and we will see everybody next week.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Looks like we're off fair.
Not yet.